I moved to a foreign country and married a so-called perfect Sigma male. But my perfect life with my perfect husband in Bombay soon became my prison. I married a Sigma male and now I can't stand him. This is my story. Chapter 1. Meeting my perfect Sigma man in Bombay. There's a vintage charm to the Colaba Café I found myself in that fateful day. A harmonious blend of colonial relics and Bollywood beats, Bombay had become my muse. I sipped my masala chai, hot and fragrant, and hummed along to Lata Mangeshkar's lilting voice crooning from a radio nearby. I remembered the radio my grandma owned, how distant that memory felt in this city of millions. "Is this seat taken?" A voice interrupted my reverie. I looked up to meet the eyes of Neil. He had an air of quiet confidence, not like the flamboyant Bollywood heroes, but more of a classic Gregory Peck. Their similarities didn't end there. He too was an American, lost and found in the heartbeats of Bombay. We spoke of many things, the magic of monsoons, the allure of old Hindi cinema, and the vibrant street life teeming just beyond our cafe window. His voice, soothing yet commanding, talked about embracing the chaos, finding beauty in imperfection. How ironic that realization seems to me now. When he asked me about my favorite Beatles song, I confessed my fondness for Norwegian Wood. It resonated with my feeling of being out of place. He chuckled, revealing that his favorite was "While My Guitar Gently Weeps," a testament, he said, to the depths of silent waters. As the afternoon sun began its descent, casting elongated shadows and bathing Bombay in a golden hue, we promised to meet again. Little did I know, that day was just the beginning of an enthralling journey. And as the sounds of bustling streets consumed our goodbyes, a deep-rooted excitement welled up inside me, an anticipation not just for what lay ahead with Neil, but a sense of having found something I didn't know I was looking for. Yet as I replay that day now, knowing what I know, would I still take that seat opposite him? Just as the last light of day disappeared, the electricity in the cafe flickered, a common power cut. And for a split second, everything went dark. The lights blinked out, plunging the cafe into an unexpected obscurity. A gasp, like a shared breath, rippled across the tables. The rhythmic hum of the ceiling fan slowed until the blades became still shadows. The sudden hush made Neil's voice, low and just above a whisper, feel intimate and close. "It's a Bombay blackout." The fleeting darkness seemed to have a language of its own, a charged dialect of unsaid words, of shared smiles, of curious wonder. Outside, the streets came alive with 100 little flames, vendors lighting candles, children chasing fireflies, and the distant hum of a city adapting. Annie chuckled, her voice playful. Guess the universe has its own plans for dramatic entrances. The light from her phone illuminated their faces, casting a soft glow in the dim cafe. It was all very cinematic, almost as if Raj Kapoor would come dancing around the corner with an umbrella and a hopeful smile. Neil laughed. That would be the Bollywood touch. And taking a cue, he began to hum a tune, Mera Juta Hai Japani, from Kapoor's legendary song, their earlier discussion of films bridging the gap. In the gentle cloak of that evening, a myriad of tales spun around them. Tales from Neil's love for the old city lanes, tales from Annie's adventures as an expat, and tales from the movies that wove threads between them. Amidst the candle-lit silhouettes, murmurs, and the scents of freshly baked bread, the two of them constructed a world that was their own, and the city outside serenaded them with its heartbeat, When the lights finally flickered back, hours had seemingly folded into moments. They had wandered from the lanes of Paris with Audrey Hepburn to the bustling streets of Bombay with Amitabh Bachchan. Annie found herself lost in Neil's descriptions of the monsoons, the festivals, and the tiny Irani cafes hidden like secrets in the city's bosom. Neil, ever the spontaneous spirit, proposed, "How about I show you some of these places tomorrow?" There was a hint of mischief, a dash of excitement in his eyes. Annie, her adventurous heart sinking with his, agreed. "Let's make it a date." In the days that followed, they roamed the city together, their romance blossoming amidst the colonial architecture, the sounds of the sea, and the myriad hues of the Bombay markets. Each day felt like a page from a fairy tale, the vibrant city setting the scene for their blooming love. Neil introduced Annie to his favorite spots, and she, in turn, showed him the city from a fresh perspective. After one such day, standing at the balcony of Neil's apartment overlooking the city, its lights twinkling like a carpet of stars, Annie whispered, "How about we make this our view?" Neil turned, surprise and delight evident in his eyes. "Move in together?" he asked, the possibility evident in his tone. And in that moment, between the magic of the city and the promise of shared tomorrows, they decided to take the leap, ready to start a new chapter in their whirlwind romance. I'd always been fascinated by Bombay's diverse architecture, Art Deco facades, Gothic spires, and grand colonial mansions interspersed with slums and modern skyscrapers. But it was the quaint Bandra bungalow Neil chose for us that captured my heart, a fusion of Indo-Portuguese charm, much like the vibrant neighborhood it nestled in. Moving in felt like setting a scene from a Wes Anderson film. Quirky wallpapers, antique furniture, and a stunning view of the bandstand promenade. I'd find Neil strumming his guitar on the veranda most evenings, lost in melodies that seemed to echo the waves crashing ashore. While the surroundings whispered tales from the past, Neil and I dreamt of our future. But I couldn't help but notice certain decisions made without my consultation. A room dedicated solely to his work, furniture I'd never seen nor selected. He said it was for our own comfort, that he knew what's best. The day he hung up a vintage poster of Gone with the Wind caught me off guard. While he saw romance, I couldn't help but recall the film's problematic undertones, especially in the context of our intercultural relationship. Did he truly understand? Despite the bliss of our surroundings, there was a hint of unease. Bombay was an open book, filled with stories at every corner. From Kishore Kumar's timeless tunes floating from radios to children playing cricket in narrow lanes. But our home, it felt more like a curated exhibit, pristine and controlled. As night draped the city, Neil whispered plans of a housewarming soiree. Full of influential friends he insisted I must meet. The stage was set, but I began to wonder, was I a leading lady in our tale or merely a supporting role?
This is chapter 1 of a 6-part short story. The next chapter is chapter 2.
Chapter 2. Sigma Male's Love, Is This Passion or Prison? It's a peculiar feeling, to be enraptured and restricted all at once. Bombay, with its undying spirit, juxtaposed against Neil's enigmatic allure. By now, our home buzzed with the who's who of the city. Cocktail parties brimming with filmmakers, business magnates, and renowned musicians. Neil, always the charismatic host, making introductions, ensuring I played my part impeccably. The rains came, as they always did in this city. Monsoon evenings were my favorite, watching the heavens pour over Marine Drive, turning the queen's necklace into a cascade of diamonds. I'd recall Tagore's poems, where rain was passion incarnate. But amidst the romance of it all, Neil's ever-tightening grip became evident. No more solo rickshaw rides to explore Worli Seaface or indulge in street chat at Chowpatty Beach. He argued it was for my safety, but was it really? One evening I chanced upon a vintage record, the Rolling Stones' Angie. Memories flooded back of college days, carefree and spirited. I began to play it, letting Jagger's voice fill the rooms. However, Neil, hearing the melancholic strains, swiftly replaced it with something more appropriate, a lively R.D. Burman track, perfect for our guests. His interventions grew, from the books I read to the cerise I wore. Even our Bollywood movie nights, once a shared joy, now followed a curated list. Classic tales of stoic heroes and doting heroines. Neil lauded them as love epitomized. To me, they began resembling our own story a bit too closely. One day I met Priya, a journalist who often wrote about Bombay's ever-changing cultural landscape. Over shared tales of vada pav and Irani cafes, she uttered something that lingered. "Annie, remember, this city, like love, should liberate, not cage." That night, the weight of Priya's words weighed on me. Was my love story turning into a tale of coercive control? Neil, in his pristine kurta, looked every bit the dream man every woman desired. But as the city's lullaby played outside, a silent question echoed in my heart. Was I in love with a man or trapped in his meticulously crafted maze? Bollywood was not just India's pride, it was its heart and soul. Neon-lit posters, stars with evergreen charm, and songs that touched the very essence of human emotion. Living in Bombay, one could never really escape its magnetic allure. And so, it became a ritual. Neil and I would visit Raj Mandir, the grand cinema palace where silver screen stories came alive, steeped in the decadence of yesteryears. In those velvet-clad seats with a world of dreams playing before us, I felt a sense of shared nostalgia. The golden era, where actors like Raj Kapoor and Madhubala wove tales of passion, mirroring our own love story. One such evening, a scene in Pyasa left an indelible mark. The protagonist, Vijay, a poet, faced a world that neither understood nor valued his deep sentiments. His lover, Gulabo, was the only solace in his tumultuous life. Watching her, I saw a reflection of myself, a woman trying desperately to find her place in a narrative that was increasingly unfamiliar. Neil, engrossed in the film, failed to notice the tears that silently streaked my face. After the film, Neil surprised me with a trip to Marine Drive. There, against the vast expanse of the Arabian Sea, he began to sing an old Muhammad Rafi song, serenading me beneath a canopy of stars. It was dreamlike, almost surreal, and I momentarily forgot the ever-growing shadows of our relationship. The days that followed were a mix of old-world romance and unsettling realities. I started dance lessons, learning the nuances of classic Bollywood dance. My instructor, Arjun, a man of few words with eyes that told countless tales, became a beacon of understanding in my world. Our conversations, initially limited to dance moves, began touching deeper chords, making me wonder if Neil was truly my one true passion, or just a captivating facade. As Bombay's Diwali approached, the city adorned itself in millions of lights, and our home was no exception. Neil planned a lavish party, with the creme de la creme of Bombay's elite on the guest list. Amidst the sounds of bursting crackers and soulful Lata Mangeshkar melodies, there was a growing dissonance in my heart. The highlight of the evening was a dance performance, with me as the star. As I twirled and danced, the world blurring around me, a line from Pyasa reverberated in my mind. Is this the bright, joyous world, or a living funeral? And as I took my final bow, with the applause echoing around and Neil's proud gaze fixed on me, I felt more lost than ever.
This is chapter 2 of a 6-part short story, The next chapter is chapter 3.
Chapter 3. Coercive control becomes a locked door to Bollywood's dark charm. Bombay, a city of contrasts. Glitz and glamour sit juxtaposed with grit and grime, and Bollywood, its shining crown jewel, isn't immune to these stark dichotomies. The very industry that gifted India timeless romances also harbored tales of power, politics, and control. Tales I was beginning to see echoed in my own life. I was no stranger to whispers. The industry was rife with them. Stories of directors and producers wielding control over young starlets, dictating not only their roles, but their lives off the set. This world, one of glamour and darkness, now mirrored my existence. I lived in a luxurious bungalow, attended the most opulent events, wore the finest saris, yet felt trapped. Neil's control was no longer subtle. It was glaringly, painfully evident. It started small, the not-so-innocent suggestions. Perhaps this sari is more appropriate for tonight's gathering. Or, it would be wise to avoid conversing with that journalist. Soon, these suggestions became demands. Every facet of my life, every choice I made, was scrutinized, questioned, and often overruled. Bollywood's charm, which once felt like a shared dream, now resembled its darker tales. Neil's infatuation with the industry was well known, and he fashioned our life to mimic it. With him as the director and me, his leading lady, molded and manipulated to fit a role of his choosing. One evening, while Neil was away on business, I stumbled upon a film, Guide, a tale of love, liberation, and self-realization. The protagonist, Rosie, trapped in a stifling marriage, finds her voice and breaks free. Watching her journey, I felt a kinship, a longing to rediscover the woman I once was, before Bombay, before Neil. Post the movie, a late-night rendezvous with Arjun at Leopold Café followed. The café, with its colonial architecture, resonated with stories of past lovers and furtive glances. We talked about the film, about life, freedom, and the cost of love. Arjun, his face a play of shadows under the dim lights, said, "Annie, sometimes the cage is gilded, but it remains a cage." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Neil became more involved in film projects, leaving me ample time to delve deeper into Bollywood's mystique. Through clandestine meetings with industry insiders, I learnt of stories eerily similar to mine. Tales of women, held captive not by chains but by charm and coercion. And then, the most significant revelation, a story, almost legend in the industry, of a leading actress from the 70s, a beauty with a tragic tale. Entrapped in a toxic relationship with a powerful film mogul, she disappeared at her prime. Some said she fled the city, others whispered about a more sinister end. Her story was a chilling mirror to mine. Lying in bed one night, Neil's steady breathing next to me, the city's distant hum in my ears, and the whispers of that actress echoing in my mind, I knew. The price of this life, of this love, was one I was no longer willing to pay. When one imagines Bombay, it's often the sweeping arch of the Gateway of India or the pristine beauty of the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel that comes to mind. It's a city that paints a picture of perfection, but scratch the surface, and you unearth stories, secrets, and sometimes sins. It was here in the underbelly of Bombay's high society that I realized Neil's Sigma allure was nothing but an artful facade. Neil was the man of the hour in Bombay, a foreigner who'd made it big, seamlessly intertwining with the city's elite. His confidence, self-sufficiency, and ability to remain detached from the chaos around him were classic Sigma traits, qualities that initially drew me to him, But beneath the surface, I was beginning to discern an unnerving reality. One night, at a lavish soiree held at the Royal Bombay Yacht Club, the mask Neil wore so impeccably began to slip. In the company of the city's influencers, amidst clinks of champagne glasses and tunes from the Beatles' latest hits playing in the backdrop, I overheard whispers of Neil's backroom dealings. The Sigma allure was just that, an allure. Beneath it lay a complex web of power and manipulation. My confidant in this revelation was none other than Arjun. He had quietly steered me to a secluded balcony overlooking the harbor. As the cool breeze played with my hair and the city lights shimmered in the distance, he revealed tales of Neil's endeavors. Behind the self-reliant, independent image was a man deeply embroiled in Bombay's power politics, using the very traits that defined a Sigma to manipulate and control. The very control I felt closing in on me. "Have you ever heard of Operation Blue Star?" Arjun asked, breaking the weight of our previous conversation. The 1984 event was a dark chapter in India's history, an act that changed Punjab and the nation forever. Neil, Arjun revealed, had certain ties, connections that benefited from the unrest. Drawing a parallel, Arjun continued, "Sometimes things aren't as straightforward as they appear. There are layers hidden beneath the facade. Just as with the operation, Neil, too, has depths you might not have fathomed." The weight of this revelation was almost suffocating. How little I truly knew of the man I'd chosen to share my life with. The mysterious Sigma traits, once endearing, now seemed sinister. The self-assuredness, a cover for his dealings. The detachment, a calculated move to keep those close to him, like me, forever at an arm's length. Returning to our palatial home that night, Neil's silhouette, illuminated by the dim table lamp, felt alien. Here was a man with tales and truths I had yet to unravel. Lying beside him, the rhythmic lull of Bombay outside, a single thought consumed me. To truly know Neil, I'd have to delve deeper, tear down the Sigma facade, and confront whatever lay beneath.
This is chapter 3 of a 6-part short story. The next chapter is chapter 4.
Chapter 4. When a Sigma's control pushes you too far. The tragedy of life is that often, the most beautiful moments come saddled with shadows, dark corners that creep in uninvited. Neil and I had ventured to the Elephanta Caves, the rock-cut temple complex on an island off the eastern coast of Bombay. The warm sunlight filtering through the trees, the beauty of the sculptures, and the mystery of ancient tales whispered through the caves should have been enchanting. But I felt stifled, cornered, as if a vice was slowly tightening around my heart. The very tenets that made Neil a Sigma, the confidence, independence, and his understated control, had turned toxic. What once felt like a stable foundation now felt like quicksand. Every step I took, every move I made, seemed underlined by his unseen presence, guiding, steering, and most unnervingly, controlling. He had planned the day meticulously, from the boat ride, timed perfectly to catch the golden hours of morning light, to our guided tour where we would uncover the ancient legends behind the rock-cut reliefs. Everything ran like clockwork, a symphony of precision, mirroring Neil's life and our marriage. In a poignant moment, I stood before the majestic sculpture of Lord Shiva, depicted as Ardhanarishvara, symbolizing the synthesis of masculine and feminine energies. It resonated deeply. The balance seemed disrupted in our lives. Neil's overpowering Sigma traits overshadowed my essence. Our guide, sensing my contemplation, whispered a legend associated with the sculpture. Balance is a delicate dance, ma'am. For every force, there's an equal and opposite one. It's the dance of energies. Later, we lunched at a quaint café overlooking the Arabian Sea. The strains of Ravi Shankar's sitar mingled with the scent of fresh seafood. Amidst the cacophony of the bustling café, a moment of introspection struck. In a sea of couples, families, and friends, laughing and sharing stories over their meals, we sat in silence. I found solace in an old R.D. Burman song playing in the backdrop. The lyrics, echoing sentiments of love, loss, and yearning, seemed to mirror my internal turmoil. How did our story come to this? When had our love story become a tale of coercion? I reminisced about the times when Neil's Sigma attributes were the anchors of our relationship. But now, those very traits felt like chains. Seeking a breather, I walked down to the shore, letting the waves kiss my feet, feeling their ebb and flow. I wished life had that rhythm, a dance of coming close and moving apart, but always returning. But with Neil, it felt like a one-way street, his Sigma control pushing me, taking, demanding, and leaving me gasping for breath. Suddenly, a hand slipped into mine. Neil. His fingers felt warm, his grasp, familiar yet foreign. "Everything okay?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. I hesitated, torn between the urge to confront him and the weight of everything left unsaid. I settled for a nod, biting back words that threatened to spill. But as the sun dipped into the horizon, casting a fiery orange hue, I made a silent promise to myself. The sun would rise again, and with it, I'd reclaim my story. I was not to be defined by Neil's Sigma personality. The dance of control had pushed me too far, and it was high time for the music to change. The streets of Bombay were alive with the vivid hues of Diwali, the festival of lights. Everywhere I turned, sparkling lanterns adorned balconies. The air was thick with the aroma of sweetmeats, and the sound of fireworks seemed like the heartbeat of the city itself. The festive season was supposed to mark new beginnings, victory over darkness, and the triumph of good over evil. But for me, it felt like a festival of revelations. Our posh apartment in Bandra was aglow with Neil's meticulous arrangements. Handcrafted marigold garlands framed our doorway, silver diyas danced on our balcony, and the aroma of sandalwood wafted through the rooms. This should have been a setting out of a dream, out of some old Bollywood romance like Mughal-e-Azam. But it felt more like a scene from Atonement, beautiful, yet laden with underlying tensions. This Diwali was special, our first as a married couple, and as tradition dictated, we were hosting a grand soirée for friends and colleagues. There was an unspoken understanding, almost a compulsion to showcase our perfect life. Neil was in his element, the center of attention, seamlessly working the room, his charm on full display. From the outside, he was the ideal husband, thoughtful, affectionate, attentive, but the undercurrents of control ran deep. A group of Neil's colleagues had started discussing the famous emergency period in India, the 21-month period from 1975 to 1977, when Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had a state of emergency declared across the country. Neil seemed to relish the conversation, drawing parallels to his own management style, how sometimes control and a firm hand were necessary for greater good. My heart sank with each word, the illusion not lost on me. I excused myself, seeking refuge in our ornate balcony overlooking the city. It was there I met Ravi, a young writer from South Bombay, passionate about Indian history and music, with a keen interest in the West. Our conversation flowed effortlessly, from the resonance of the Beatles' Norwegian Wood after George Harrison's tryst with the sitar, to the audacity of Midnight's Children in its challenge to the very fabric of Indian history. Neil found us in the middle of our animated discussion on Ian McEwan's exploration of love and misunderstanding in Atonement. His face contorted with a hint of jealousy, and I saw a flicker of the Sigma dominance rear its head. "Annie," he interjected with a forced smile, "perhaps you might want to entertain our other guests as well." The message was clear. As Ravi excused himself, Neil's grip on my arm was firmer than necessary, a silent reprimand for my perceived misstep. But this Diwali night, amidst its luminance and shadow, had kindled a spark in me. The festival culminated with us on the terrace, watching the city illuminated with fireworks. The sky looked like a canvas painted with strokes of gold, silver, and crimson. Neil, holding a sparkler, whispered promises of forever, his words dripping with saccharine sweetness. But as the night deepened and the echoes of fireworks faded, I felt a resounding clarity. This Diwali, the Festival of Lights, had illuminated not just the streets of Bombay, but the crevices of my marriage, revealing its cracks and blemishes. The challenge now was to either mend those cracks or find the courage to break free entirely. In the silent hours of the night, as Neil slept soundly beside me, I promised myself that by the next Diwali, things would be different. This festival of revelations was just the beginning.
This is chapter 4 of a 6-part short story. The next chapter is chapter 5.
Chapter 5. Why my Sigma male perfect relationship triggers old wounds. It's strange how seemingly perfect situations can uncover the oldest and deepest scars. In the twinkling streets of Bombay, amidst the city's historic charm and modern hustle, Neil's unwavering control and the facade of our perfect relationship began to resonate with a past I had tried so hard to forget. There was a time, long before Neil, when I fell headlong into love with Jeremy, a young poet with soulful eyes, during my years at Oxford. We'd meet secretly at the Turf Tavern, an old, almost hidden pub frequented by past luminaries like Thomas Hardy and even Stephen Hawking. Jeremy introduced me to the world of poetry, jazz, and whispered dreams. Our love was passionate, intense, like a song on repeat. But beneath those layers of romance lay Jeremy's overpowering need to dominate, to control, veiled by his poetic verses and deep gazes. Our relationship ended on a fateful evening at the Bridge of Sighs, a place that once echoed our shared laughter and dreams. That night, as a light drizzle covered Oxford in a silvery sheen, Jeremy's words turned cold, his actions colder. I walked away with a heavy heart and a resolution, never to let someone have that power over me again. Back in Bombay, in the confines of our luxurious apartment, every moment with Neil started feeling like déjà vu, echoing that lost time in Oxford. The backdrop was different, the streets no longer cobblestoned, the sounds now a mix of Bollywood beats and honking rickshaws, but the essence remained hauntingly familiar. As Neil's Sigma traits became more pronounced, I found solace in old jazz records and poetry, especially the works of Larkin and Auden. One evening, as Ella Fitzgerald's haunting voice serenaded our living room with "Every Time We Say Goodbye," memories of Jeremy, of Oxford, of promises and betrayals came rushing back. Neil, noticing my distant gaze, wrapped an arm around me, pulling me close. "Lost in thought," he murmured, pressing a kiss on my temple. It was a gesture meant to comfort, but it felt suffocating, a reminder of the invisible chains he had wrapped around me. Later, at a gathering with expatriate friends at the iconic Leopold Café, as conversations swirled about Bollywood's golden era, Raj Kapoor's genius, and the cultural revolutions of the 70s, I felt a pull towards a world outside Neil's Sigma hold. I imagined myself exploring the city alone, tasting its authentic flavors, dancing to its rhythms, free from Neil's shadow. The tipping point came one balmy evening when I stumbled upon an old photo of the Bridge of Sighs amidst my belongings. Holding that picture, memories surged, of love, pain, liberation, and resilience. It became evident. I couldn't allow Neil to be another Jeremy. The past had triggered a realization. I deserved more than the prison of perfection, more than a facade. Closing my eyes, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontations and decisions ahead. My journey with Neil, with its veneer of perfection, was slowly driving me to the precipice. But this time, armed with lessons from my past, I was ready to reclaim my narrative, my life. The monsoons in Bombay have an ethereal charm, transforming the city with its passionate downpours. Rains have a way of bearing souls, washing away pretenses, and it was against this very backdrop that my confrontation with Neil took place. The day started like any other. Neil had left for work, leaving me with the solitude I craved, a refuge from his constant presence. Outside, the skies were a deep shade of gray, heavy with the promise of rain. But inside our apartment, I felt a storm of a different kind brewing. The evening saw the onset of the monsoon, the rains descending in torrents, capturing the collective moods of Bombay. The sounds of raindrops drumming against the windows mingled with distant notes of Lata Mangeshkar's timeless classics, echoing from a nearby radio. The onset of the downpour, combined with Neil's late return from work, presented me with a quiet moment of introspection. Sitting by the window, watching the rains cleanse the streets, the memories of my past, of Jeremy, and the stark parallels with my life now with Neil were all too overwhelming. Armed with this clarity, I decided it was time for confessions, for clearing the air. I knew confrontation was imminent. Neil arrived, drenched from the rain, his usually composed facade slightly ruffled. The sheer rawness of his appearance, in contrast to his everyday polished self, was a sight. He looked human, vulnerable, the Sigma shield momentarily down. The scent of petrichor in the air, the melancholic hum of Kishore Kumar's Rim Jim Giri Sawan in the background, and the two of us, facing each other, was reminiscent of a scene straight out of a classic Bollywood drama. It felt fitting. "Neil," I began, my voice trembling. "We need to talk." He looked up, surprise evident in his eyes. "What's wrong?" Gathering my courage, I poured out my feelings, drawing parallels with Jeremy, Oxford, the music, the poetry, and the pain of history repeating itself. The very essence of our relationship, of his Sigma traits, the control, the suffocation. It all came tumbling out. I spoke of my dreams, my desires, my need for space and individuality. I confessed my spiraling thoughts, the near-miss incident at the gateway, the recklessness and the escapades. Throughout my outpouring, Neil remained silent, absorbing every word. It was as if the rains outside mirrored my catharsis, every drop echoing my confessions. Finally, when words failed me, Neil, visibly shaken, whispered, "I had no idea." That night there was no anger, no arguments, just two souls bared, raw and vulnerable. The monsoons had not only cleansed the city, but our relationship as well. As dawn broke, with the rain still pouring outside, we held on to each other, not as controller and the controlled, but as two flawed beings seeking understanding. And yet, while the confessions had brought momentary respite, the weight of decisions hung heavily in the air. Was this confrontation the beginning of a new chapter or the beginning of the end?
This is chapter 5 of a 6-part short story. The next chapter is the final chapter, chapter 6.
Chapter 6. Planning my escape and confronting my Sigma man. Will I have the strength? The monsoon night had unraveled so much between Neil and me, a culmination of feelings and confessions. But that night was just a gateway, an entry point into deeper introspection. I needed to confront not just Neil, but the choices I'd made. Bombay, with its rich history of resilience and spirit, provided an uncanny backdrop. This city had seen its share of tumult and had always emerged stronger. Could I say the same for myself? The day after the confession was surreal. There was an unusual calmness in the apartment. Neil had gone to work, and I, wrapped in the embrace of my thoughts, decided to visit Leopold Café, a place that had seen the ravages of the 2008 terror attacks and still stood as a testament to Bombay's indomitable spirit. As I sipped my chai, surrounded by the cafe's colonial aura and the whispers of bygone eras, an idea began to form. If I had to confront Neil and potentially break away from the chains that held me, I needed a plan, a way out. Revisiting memories of my time at Oxford, of Jeremy, and of my independent self, I began to sketch out a strategy. Renting out my old Oxford apartment, getting back to writing, perhaps even teaching. With Bombay's vibrant arts and literature scene, there were myriad opportunities for someone like me. But the bigger challenge remained, confronting Neil. My heart raced as I considered the implications. In this vast city where tales of love, loss, and resurgence danced in every corner, would I be yet another story? As evening approached, I found myself at Marine Drive, watching the sun set over the Arabian Sea, its hues mirroring the tumult in my heart. I recalled the Bollywood classics that spoke of love and sacrifice, of women torn between duty and desire. Lata Mangeshkar's Lag Ja Gel wafted through the air, an old tune from someone's radio. Was this serendipity or the universe aligning with my state of mind? It was then that I felt a presence beside me. Neil. He looked at me, the familiar Sigma demeanor replaced with vulnerability. "I've been thinking," he began. "So have I replied, my voice firm yet quivering with emotion. We talked, right there on Marine Drive, with the city's skyline as our witness. We spoke of our dreams, fears, and the web of control that had ensnared us. I told him of my plans, of my longing for Oxford, for writing, for freedom. Neil, to my surprise, confessed his own struggles. Beneath the Sigma facade was a man grappling with insecurities, using control as a coping mechanism. He too had been suffocated, just in a different way. The evening turned into night, the city lights shimmering on the water. As we stood there, two souls in a vast metropolis, it felt as if Bombay itself was rooting for us, urging us to find our way. But as the night deepened, the question loomed large. Could there be a future for us? Or was this the beginning of our separate paths? The week that followed our heart-to-heart on Marine Drive blurred into a symphony of realizations. Bombay, with its unceasing hum and the maddening allure of its chaos, had become the theater of our lives, and Neil and I, mere actors playing our parts. At the heart of this pulsating city, Marine Drive had come to symbolize our relationship. From our first walk there, where the Arabian Sea had whispered secrets of Bombay's storied past to us, to that fateful evening when we laid bare our souls, this place was our refuge, a witness to our evolving saga. On a balmy evening, as the golden hues of the sun painted the sky, I found myself drawn to this very spot. The waves, gently caressing the shores, seemed to beckon me, inviting me to reflect on my journey, on our journey. "Annie," I heard Neil's voice behind me. I didn't need to turn. His presence was familiar, comforting yet laden with a heaviness. This was where we began, and perhaps this was where we'd find closure. He handed me a vinyl record, the cover adorned with the iconic Bollywood duo, Raj Kapoor and Nargis. "Awara," he whispered. An ode to the 1951 classic, this record was more than just music. It was a slice of Bombay's glorious past, a nod to our shared love for this city's cinematic history. "You remember our first date? When we danced to the songs of this era, lost in our own Bollywood dream." His voice was soft, tinged with nostalgia. I smiled, recalling that evening. The dreamy sequences, the intoxicating melodies, the promise of undying love. Bollywood had been our escape, a world where everything was possible. But as with any film, the real had come to an end, leaving us to grapple with reality. "Neil," I began, taking a deep breath. "Bombay has been an incredible chapter in our lives, but like any story, it must move forward." He nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon, where the setting sun cast a warm glow over the waters. "I know, and I've been doing some thinking. Maybe it's time for a new beginning, a fresh start." The weight of his words hung in the air. Here we were, at the crossroads, with the power to pen our next chapter. The very city that had witnessed our love story, with its rich tapestry of history and culture, now stood as a testament to the choices we had to make. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over Marine Drive, we held each other close, drawing comfort from our shared memories. The iconic Queen's necklace, with its string of lights, sparkled in the distance, reminiscent of the many tales it had seen. Bombay, with its myriad stories of love, loss, and resurgence, would always remain a part of us. And as we stood there, hand in hand, we knew that our story, though punctuated by highs and lows, was just another chapter in this city's rich narrative. But as the night deepened and the city lights shone brighter, a new dawn awaited us. A dawn where the lessons of the past would pave the way for a future, uncertain yet hopeful. And in that hope, we found our strength, ready to embark on our next adventure.
Thank you for listening to this true life story of love, betrayal, and heartache. If you like this story and would like to hear more stories of love, betrayal, cheating, and candid confessions like this one, please make sure you subscribe to the Romance Diaries on YouTube. And don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button.